Hello there, and welcome to my channel. My name is Cody, and I'm here to guide you through the world of Bitcoin and talk about what happened today in this week with Bitcoin. Because the last video I made, I talked about how this week was preparing to be a week of strong volatility. And so I want to go ahead and expand upon that a little bit in this video. So Bitcoin today has actually had a relatively mild type of day. We're only talking about it being up about 0.31%. And there's some very interesting things happening right now that I want to bring to your guys' attention. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is what's going on with the Bitcoin chart TA. But before we get to that, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to check out my Twitter. I definitely would appreciate to follow me on Twitter or on Threads. And then be sure to go ahead and give this video a like or a comment and let me know what you guys think. So, starting with our Bitcoin chart TA, what we have right now is Bitcoin is in kind of a weird place. So, we've had a week in which we've seen some extreme volatility, specifically on Monday, where the price went all the way down to about 28.8 and then popped back up again. And so, since then, we've been kind of sideways a little bit. We've seen a little bit of a pump up here to about 29,600 or so, 29,700, and then a quick rejection of that level, and then followed by another fall through the support here at 29.2, and then a little bit more action for the rest of the week. So Bitcoin has been mostly sideways this week, apart from some crazy volatility on Monday. And this is kind of surprising, given the fact that we've seen Bitcoin move massively on weeks in which the Fed has either raised interest rates or paused interest rates. This did not happen this time, and so that's really surprising. So the Fed, the FOMC we had earlier this week, we barely saw much of a movement. This little bump up here we saw was it basically for the FOMC, and the market had largely priced this in. So that's why we didn't really see much movement on that end. And then everything else has been fairly low volume. Honestly, this whole week has been a very low volume. And what's especially interesting about this is if we compare a Bitcoin to the NASDAQ 100. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the Bitcoin price, okay, over the last 5 days. You can see here we're down 2.43%. And if you compare that with the NASDAQ 100, what you can see here is the NASDAQ 100 at the same time is up 1.78%. So we've seen a pretty dramatic divergence between NASDAQ and between Bitcoin. That's not normally what happens. Normally we see them move up or down in concert. So we're starting to see Bitcoin actually diverge from this quite a bit. And so what's going on here is that we're having a lot of traders and investors are following the AI hype train and buying AI tech stocks and not paying attention whatsoever to crypto or to Bitcoin. So we're starting to see a bit of a divergence between NASDAQ and Bitcoin. So that's part of the reason why we haven't really seen much Bitcoin happen this week. Another thing I want to go ahead and point out is that we've had today a significant options expiry. Now, I put this out on Twitter, but I did talk about it in my last video, but we had options expiry today, the 28th of July, mostly calls, some puts, about $2 billion or so worth. And so we did see a little bit of a push up here to about 25, and then it got rejected. Now, you guys remember that the max pain price for that options expiry was about 29,000. So the market's always going to try to push it down to that max pain price, and we saw it come down and sell off pretty hard after pushing up into this level. Now, earlier I talked about how we saw this relatively mild performance going on with Bitcoin. But what I'm thinking that we're going to wind up seeing right now is we're going to wind up seeing a Bitcoin in which we may get a small weekend pump, like our usual Saturday, Sunday pump, followed by a dump on Monday through Wednesday, or maybe even Thursday and Friday. Sometime next week, I'm expecting that we're going to wind up getting a little bit of a sell-off, and we could come all the way down here to this box that I've outlined here in green at about 28K, and under this box. Now, there's a lot of buyers in this area right here, so I do expect that it'll come down, it'll touch it, and then it will pop back up again, as we have here in these arrows. But there is a possibility that we could actually move down a little bit further at that point. I'm going to go ahead and go to the daily here. and you guys can see what kind of support we have in this area. There's a lot of support if you expanded upon this a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and draw in a trend line here. But there's a lot of support in this area, and we could see buyers step in right about here or so. This would kind of make sense coming down here at about 28, 28.5, 28.4, somewhere in this region. Now, I don't think this is the most likely scenario. I do think that we're going to come down to that box that I showed you, 28.8, 28.9. We're going to retest that and then rebound. But it is possible that we'll come down here into the 28.5 region and then bounce. So the reason for that is because Bitcoin has really just been unable to sustain any sort of upwards momentum. We've seen many times here, especially in this rally in the FOMC, that the sellers come in and then the buyers basically disappear and they push the price even lower. Now, again, this is a short-term problem. This is a short-term trend, and I do expect the long-term uptrend will resume in the future. But for now, this is, I think, the best chances of what's going to happen in the coming week. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at our Bitcoin, our perpetual futures, what we can see here is that we've seen the longs gain dominance. That's what we see it down here in the funding rate as the funding rate increases. And simultaneously, what we saw is in the open interest, we're seeing a reduced number of contracts down here. Well, mostly contracts have been have just been liquidated, or they have not been adding to their current positions. So we're starting to see a situation where the volatility is going down a little bit according to this open interest, and the longs currently are dominant. We have not seen any major liquidations in the past week or so, apart from on Monday. That's the reason why we haven't seen some extreme price action. If we got another day with extreme liquidations, either to the shorts or to the longs, we would see a corresponding increase or decrease in the Bitcoin price. Now, another thing I want to go ahead and talk about is what's going on with the exchanges. So the exchange reserve, right, which is a measure of how much Bitcoin are on the exchanges, has actually gone up over the last week. If we go here and take a look at the weekly, we can see that it went up from about 2.08 million to about 2.09 million. So there has been a very small increase in the number of Bitcoin that are going to the exchanges. And this would make sense when you think about the Bitcoin price lately. There seem to be quite a few sellers, again, above 30K. And so that level is attracting these sellers. They're coming in, they're selling, and then they're putting their Bitcoin on the exchanges. Now, if we actually take a look at our SOPR, our spent output profit ratio, that gives us an idea of profitability. What you can see here is during the 26th, we actually dipped pretty significantly below this one line. And again, remember the one line, this dotted line right here, gives us an idea of profitability. Anything under this line means that sellers are not selling in profit. So what we're starting to see here is some sellers that are weak hands. They're coming in. They're seeing Bitcoin's hesitancy to push above 31K, okay? And then they're selling it off immediately, and they're selling at a loss. That's what I've been seeing in the charts right now. Now, I also want to go ahead and talk about the halving real quick. So the halving is happening in 263 days. This is there. You can find all kinds of Bitcoin halving clocks around the web. All you have to do is search for them. But this is one I like, especially because it shows you the actual estimated date, April 17th, 2024. We have less than a year to go until the next halving, and this is important. If you guys are curious why this is so important, I've talked about the halving multiple times in my cycle videos, but I'll also be having a video in which I talk about where Bitcoin is in the cycle and the long-term chart TA for Bitcoin and comparing it to where we were back in 2019. Okay, this is very important to understand why this impacts Bitcoin. If you guys are interested, check those videos out. Next, I want to talk about what happened this week for economic reports. Now, as I previously mentioned, we had the FOMC decision, and most of that was already priced in, so we didn't see much reaction from the market. But Thursday, we got GDP, which was very interesting because GDP came in stronger than usual, 2.4% compared to the estimated 2.0%. All right, that's bullish. Okay, the economy is stronger than expected. And then down here, if you take a look at PCE, the personal consumption expenditures, what we've seen here is that it's actually been lower than expected. Okay, so If you take a look at the core PCE, it's 0.2 right now. Previously, it was at 0.3. So inflation is coming down. That's a positive sign. I think this is messed up here, but it should say 4.1 compared to the expected 4.2. And then the last reading for that was 4.6 of the core PCE. So again, what this is showing is that inflation is coming down. Very positive, good information. We're in kind of a situation where bullish news like this, strength of the economy, should be seen as a bullish indicator, not as a bearish indicator, not as a contrarian indicator that causes the Fed to have to raise rates higher. Okay, because eventually the Fed's going to have to stop, despite what they say, despite all the, despite what Jerome Powell says on the conferences. Eventually, the Fed has to stop raising rates. They will come to a point in which they'll say we cannot raise rates any longer, and the strength of the economy strengthening, is a good thing for Bitcoin and is a good thing for crypto, because that means that people have money to go and invest in Bitcoin and other crypto. So, speaking of our altcoins, we go here to take a look at Ethereum. Now, Ethereum has shown some very interesting price action. So we have the resistance point here that I've outlined at 1858. This became support as soon as it crossed above that region. And now we can go ahead and put in a resistance line here at about 1880 or so. That's going to be our new resistance for Ethereum. It seems to be in a short-term uptrend. And if you take a look at the medium trend, I guess you could say here, it's mostly sideways. Now for Ethereum, it's a 58 on the hourly, so 58 RSI on the hourly, so it can go either up or down at this point. But it would need to come through this resistance here at 1880. So this resistance has been very difficult for Ethereum to overcome in the past. And in order for it to do that, it needs to follow a Bitcoin breakout. Ethereum tends to follow Bitcoin in larger volatility. Okay, so that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about this. Let me know what you guys think about the Fed and their impact on the market, and what are you guys expecting for the Bitcoin price for next week? Leave a comment below, and I will catch you guys on the next video.